Welcome to our podcast, The Social Experience. On our first episode today, we have here Bella, Sarah, and Cora discussing the topic of juuling, specifically the social aspect of this addiction that has taken over the country. So recently, it's been hard to deny, schools all over the nation have some sort of secret juuling club. So this has been apparent not only with adults, but with teenagers, even in middle schools. What do you guys think is the reason why it's so common?
I think part of the reason that juuling is so common is because it's just like people are broadcasting it and making it seem like it's attractive and like it's something that you should be doing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of still a mystery why exactly they're doing it, because our students receive like so much education on drugs and they like know that it's addictive, but they still choose to do it anyway. So
Yeah, Cora, that's so true. And also, I think that we should mention, for those of you who don't know what a Juul is a type of e-cigarette, and according to a report done by Time magazine, it makes up 33% of the e-cigarette market in 2017. That just goes to show how common this is.
Yeah, also, they contain large amounts of nicotine, which is the main reason why it's so addictive.
So let's isolate just the social pressure and how people are affected by it. There was an experiment once done by a psychologist named Solomon Asch. Basically, he was studying conformity, which is changing your beliefs or behaviors to match those of others.
In an article published November 1st, 1999, by John M. Levine titled Solomon Asch's Legacy for Group Research, he describes the experiment by Solomon Asch and his study on conformity. In the experiment, Asch is trying to see if people will conform to the obviously wrong answer because of people around them. He does this by having subjects pick from 3 lines and choose which of the 3 lines is closest to the original line. He then has confederates all pick the obviously wrong line before the subject to see if their subjects would change their answer to the wrong answer.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is that they found in most cases the subject actually went along with the obvious wrong answer.
Yeah, I think that's really relatable to what we're talking about right now, juuling, especially the social side, because we find it so irrational that someone would sacrifice their physical health for such an unnecessary life choice, but this experiment really exposes that nature in humans, our tendency to conform to those around us.
Yeah, it's like scientific backup on the impact of peer pressure.
A part of that I think is really interesting is that we were able to scientifically prove how people are actually really, truly, and honestly affected by those around them, and they agree to do with other things that people want to do. Especially because, like, besides just learning about drugs and alcohol and the side effects of things that we learn about in school, we also learn about peer pressure and how to, like, reject or accept peer pressure in a way that is, like, healthy and responsible.
Yeah, and at school, not only do they, like, directly tell you about the negative effects of peer pressure and how strong it can be, but also indirectly. Like, in AP Literature, we read novels like The Great Gatsby, and we, like, learn things about how you can be different, and it's a lot of these novels that we read, we see, like, themes that really have to, like, relate to what we're talking about right now.
Some of those things that we kind of have been able to see is like something like social pressure and like hidden identities. And so, especially in like The Great Gatsby, you're able to realize that for social pressure, it's like shown a couple times that Nick Carraway literally states that he doesn't agree with drinking, he doesn't like drinking. But when he's around Gatsby and he's in that party environment and everyone else around him's drinking, he chooses to do it anyway.
That's like kind of a direct example of what we're talking about right now with juuling. Most people know it's bad for you, and a lot of people don't want to do it, but they do it anyways.
Yeah, and also I noticed that in Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, another book we had to read this year, how the monster is treated by society kind of reflects how teens believe they would be seen if they didn't conform to the actions of the crowd. They might feel like they'd be rejected by their peers as the monster was rejected by society. But honestly, I feel like that shouldn't be the case, because if you're surrounding yourself with good people that are like your true friends, they wouldn't try to force you to be someone you're not.
Yeah, you know, a similar book that I've seen that kind of idea in is also that book, A Bad Case of the Stripes, that I remember reading as like a little kid, which I think you guys have read too, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so in that book, I remember them talking about, it's kind of developing this girl, Camilla, the main character, as someone who is really insecure about herself and her ability to fit in. And then it ends up manifesting itself into like some kind of stripes. And she tries to find herself almost trying to please everybody around her, and she can't because it's impossible to please everyone. And so she ends up facing this real like struggle as a young child where she's just trying to please everyone and she really can't. And it's something that she has to go through, and it's a struggle for her. And it's kind of just like peer pressure because people are asking her to do certain things with her stripy skin and asking her to make it look a certain way, and she can't because, you know, she doesn't like the way it looks, or someone else doesn't like the way it looks, or it hurts their eyes, or whatever the issue is. And so it really shows children at a young age that people are going to be asking things that you can't always agree with or necessarily, like, I don't know, agree to do with people.
Bella, that's a children's book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a picture book.
Well, I think that's kind of cool how it's like aimed towards such a young age, and like kids so young are starting to learn about this, like, don't fall to peer pressure, or just what peer pressure is in general. And that kind of lines up with how, like, juuling specifically, it's starting to like go even further, like not just in adults but in teenagers, and now even middle schools, and maybe it'll even go like younger kids.
Yeah, I just think it's really interesting that this whole time we've been seeing these similar concepts in literature, like even as young children in those books, like picture books such as that, as well as books that we're reading in school, and we just haven't really never noticed until now.
According to the Lancet Child and Adolescent Health, nicotine exposure during adolescence can cause addiction and harm the developing adolescent brain. And this is really important because the frontal lobe of teenagers' brains are not fully developed, so this affects their ability to make decisions, and this strongly influences how they choose to respond to their peers.
So I think we've covered a lot over the topic of the spreading of juuling. The significance of how the environment impacts this is greater than many of us realize. As we mentioned before, even in literature, we are being taught to resist everything this addiction stands for. And even when being shown that at a young age, people still choose to conform to the large portion of the population who choose to do the wrong thing.
Thank you for tuning in to our episode about the social influence on juuling. This has been Bella, Sarah, and Cora. Thanks again for listening.